Hello, welcome to Revive Hi-Fi Canada, and I apologize. I think we're having a little bit of a camera malfunction, but we're going to keep rolling on here like we do at Revive Hi-Fi Canada. Today I'm really excited because we're getting to discuss the JMLAB Focal. I think they eventually became Focal. The JMLAB Chorus 705 speakers. I believe these are from the early to mid 2000s, I think 2010 or so, maybe, I'm guessing in that range. These are, again, two-way bookshelf speakers. They have a really nice build quality, I'm going to say right from the top. These were voiced for voices. I mean, these are absolutely clear on the voice, the mid-range, beautiful sounding in the mid-range, extremely smooth in that regard. These speakers are made in France. They are made extremely well. They're little speakers. They're about 12 inches tall. They don't go very far back. I would say they're about maybe about 7 inches back. They have quite a nice build quality to them. I think they're about 7 inches back by about 7.5 inches wide. So they're not very large boxes, but they don't don't let that discourage your opinion of these, because I would say that they're outstanding. I would say they are very clear sounding speakers. So the box is very well braced. I won't do the knock test. I've done that several times in the videos. It knocks just like the other speakers that I've knocked on in these videos, and there's no hollowness to them at all. It has a vinyl wrap, as you can see on these speakers, a brown vinyl wrap. It is beautifully done. It looks like real wood veneer. When I first saw them, I thought that was real wood. I don't think that's real wood. That is a vinyl wrap, but it's an extremely well done vinyl wrap. It has a woofer that is made out of a polyglass cone, and I believe that's a 5 1/4 inch woofer, but I believe that material, a polyglass cone, is a patented or a proprietary material that is made by this company to help with being lightweight and rigid, as is the case with many of the speakers that we review on the channel, especially as we move to more modern speakers. I would say this speaker may have been slightly ahead of its time in terms of its sound quality. It's really good. It has a inverted dome tweeter that's made of titanium with a waveguide in the middle. You might be able to see that on the camera here. It is front ported. You can see on the bottom it has a front slot port, and this is the first front slot port speaker I've ever had, actually, and reviewed on the channel. I've never had one before, and I have to say I'm impressed with the front slot port. I may look for others that have a front slot port, because the bass response is very impressive. I mean, and the tidiness of the bass, the tightness of the bass on this speaker is really well done, and I'm going to talk more about that as we go along here. It has a frequency response of 67 hertz to 22,000 kilohertz, which makes sense. It's not a huge box, of course, and it's so it doesn't have the biggest bass response. It is 8 ohms in impedance. It also has a high sensitivity of 88.5 decibels, so it's easy to drive. And I like to say that these would be ideal speakers for your desktop application. I truly enjoyed them in that regard. I love that tweeter. I'll come right out and say it. That tweeter is got I had EPI speakers, Epicure, I believe it was 100s, and those had an inverted tweeter, and they sounded magnificent, and they were a bigger box, of course, with an 8-inch woofer, so they got a bit more bass than these, but the kind of idea is great with the inverted tweeter, and I wonder why I don't see more speakers with inverted tweeters, because with the inverted dome, because it's very well implemented here, and it was also in the EPI speaker that I had. The box is well braced, as I mentioned. It has a pretty good, I'll start with the bass. The bass goes down to 67 on paper, of course, but I don't feel like, I mean, I use these at my computer. I've demoed them here with this Harman Kardon receiver, HK3375, which I also love. I think they match really nicely together. I see the bass as being very, very well done for a speaker of this size. Like, I use these without, this is being demoed without a sub, and also I use them on my computer without a sub, and I don't feel like I missed the sub. I guess it also depends on the type of music that you listen to. I've tried it recently with Linkin Park, and I did their new album, and I did like the From Zero album, and I think that it did have a little bit of a challenge with some of those songs in terms of bass and trying to get all of the sound out of that album. It's a great album. And some songs it did have a little bit of a challenge, but when vocals came through on that album, the mid-range was absolutely outstanding. The mid-range on these and the voices are really amazing. It feels like the singer's in the room with you, and it's I'm not exaggerating. It's one of the better mid-range speakers at reproducing mid-range that I've seen, that I've heard, and I think that I truly enjoy them for that reason. The highs, I guess, it's a small speaker, right? So the highs, they do feel not shrill, extremely detailed, not super detailed though. And maybe that's a good thing, because when I push them, I'll bring back the example with the Linkin Park. I also tried 21 Pilots on these. When I push them, they do get a slightly shouty, but that's expected with a speaker. This is like a 12-inch tall speaker that has not very much depth to it in terms of size. So and it's front ported, so I can see why if you're pushing it too hard, you're going to run into some challenges. I could imagine, I haven't tried these with a sub, but I would imagine they would be really nice with a sub. So I would also consider perhaps tilted warmer in the electronics for these speakers, just to keep those highs under control. But overall, I would say for a metal tweeter, it does a fantastic job of the highs, and I didn't feel too much shrillness at all until I really pushed it, and then to the high volumes, and then I did feel that shrillness. Imaging is really good. I would say again, for a speaker of this size, it's really quite something. Right now on my desk, beside my desk, I use speaker stands, small stands with Wharfdale Diamond 12.1s, and I think that's my desktop speaker of choice. But I would say that these come pretty close. These are really well done. A different sound. Both do vocals extremely well. I think a lot of the music I listen to is vocal heavy. Fleetwood Mac, I would say, and many of the newer music that I listen to, I think, the Killers, the voices come through extremely well with these, and the Wharfdales, I would say. But the Wharfdales are a tad more laid back. These are edging more towards clarity. So I would have partnering electronics that are tilting slightly warm, not necessarily super warm, but just slightly warm, in terms of getting a good response from these speakers. Imaging soundstage, I guess for the size, they scale with the electronics pretty well. So I push these up with my desktop mini amp, with small topping or Fosse amp, and they sound pretty good. But then when I put them with this Harman Kardon, they sound better. And then I put them with my Cayenne, which is quite neutral. They scale larger. So the sound stage is really quite impressive for these speakers. I really enjoy them. I think that's all I've got to say. Bass, treble, just don't push it too hard. Bass, treble, mid-range is the superstar. I would say imaging is really good, considering the tweeter. I mean, many of the newer speakers have the tweeter a little closer to the woofer than these, and I think that's to help with the imaging. And with the KEF Q series, you get the tweeter right inside the woofer. But in this case, other companies I've noticed with the newer speakers that I have are getting the tweeter closer and closer to the woofer. So in this case, they're not totally close to each other, but the imaging is really well done. The sound stage for a small speaker, excellent. So overall, I would say great speaker. Very nice binding posts on the back, gold plated. Again, my camera is a bit messed up. I apologize again. I will sign off based on that. I think I'm going to try and refocus here. I'm going to sign off and bid you adieu. And see you next time on Revive Hi-Fi Canada. Again, the JMLAB Chorus 705. Really nice speaker. 5-inch woofer. Very well done. Very well implemented. Nice box. Beautiful looking. Has grills. Doesn't have magnetic grills. But very nice. Very enjoyable speaker. Thank you. See you again next time on Revive Hi-Fi Canada. Bye now.